Her son was taken by the system, 22 years later. He's her boss. In the bright maternity ward of a hospital in Rosewood, the lights hummed like tiny bugs overhead. Ella Washington shifted slowly in her hospital bed. Her throat felt dry, her arms heavy, and her stomach ached. A nurse had mentioned something about problems, her baby coming too fast. Too early, then everything went dark. Now, she felt pain. She blinked hard, trying to clear her eyes. The clock on the wall showed 6:43 p.m. The last time she'd checked. It was almost 10 a.m. Something wasn't right. She pressed the call button and tried to sit up. Her body wouldn't cooperate. A soft knock came at the door. A nurse walked in, not the one from before. This one was older, with a clipboard she didn't look up from. "Where's my baby?" Ella asked, her voice scratchy. The nurse's face changed, just a little. "You need rest, Ms. Washington. You had an emergency C-section. There were complications. Where is he?" Ella insisted, trying to move her legs off the bed. The nurse stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The baby was placed in protective custody this morning. There were issues with your paperwork. You didn't sign the parental claim forms. And your listed address was a shelter." "What are you talking about?" Ella rasped. "He's mine. I didn't sign anything. The state made the decision at noon. The Department of Family Services took over the case." Ella froze. Her heart, already sore from surgery, broke in a new way. "What do you mean, took over?" "The child was moved to a temporary placement home under emergency rules. You should have been told earlier. But you were sedated." Ella shook her head. No, I didn't sign anything. I didn't give him up." The nurse's voice stayed flat. "These things go through the court now. If there's a mistake, your lawyer can file a petition." "I don't have a lawyer," Ella whispered. And that was that. They sent her home 2 days later. No car seat, no follow-up, just a pamphlet for low-income moms and a phone number that never answered. Before she left, the hospital gave her one thing: a small envelope with a copy of the birth certificate and a Polaroid photo. The name on the certificate was Jaden Washington. Time of birth: 11:07 a.m. He had her nose. That's all she could see through the oxygen mask and hospital blanket. Her baby was gone. Ella was only 19. No college degree. No steady job. Just a waitress gig at a diner and $318 saved in an envelope under her mattress. It wasn't enough for a lawyer. But she spent it all anyway. She called every number the hospital gave her. She showed up at the courthouse in Rosewood twice a week for 6 months. She filed every form, waited in rooms for hours with papers in plastic folders. Her hope fading. At one point, she found a volunteer advocate named Ms. Ruth. Ms. Ruth helped her file an emergency custody appeal. But the hearing got delayed. Then canceled. Then denied. They said you didn't follow through. Ms. Ruth told her gently. They said you didn't show up. I did, Ella said. I believe you, Ms. Ruth whispered. But this system doesn't. After 18 months, the case went cold. The file was marked closed. Jaden had been adopted, they said. The records were sealed. That night, Ella screamed into her pillow until her voice gave out. Years went by. She didn't marry, couldn't. Every man who tried to love her found a wall she couldn't break down. She never had another child, couldn't bear the thought. She moved apartments, changed jobs, but never left Rosewood. He was still here, somewhere. She kept the Polaroid in a box with the birth certificate. She memorized the details: time of birth, length, weight, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. She'd repeat it like a prayer. Every birthday, she bought a small cake and sat quietly. Sometimes she lit a candle. Sometimes she didn't. By the time Ella turned 41, the box had yellowed. The ink on the certificate faded. But she still read it once a month. Jaden, her son, gone, but never forgotten. The office lobby at her job was always chilly. Ella kept a small heater under the front desk, hidden behind a recycling bin in a dusty plant no one watered. She never turned it up high, just enough to keep her knees from stiffening during long mornings. She answered phones and handled deliveries for the Rosewood Youth Tech Foundation. It was a nonprofit that gave laptops, grants, and coding classes to kids who needed them, things Ella never had growing up. It wasn't a bad job. She'd been there almost 3 years, starting as a temp and working up to full-time receptionist. The team was nice, though often tired, and the foundation had just gotten a big donor deal. That meant new leadership was coming. An email about the new executive director went out on a Wednesday morning. It had no photo, just a name. Jaden Michael Harris. Ella's hand froze on the mouse. Jaden. She stared at the screen for a long time. Her breathing shallow. It wasn't a rare name. Harris wasn't either. Michael could just be a middle name. Maybe it was nothing, but something in her chest stirred. Old memories, like dust in a box that never really closed. She closed the email without reading the rest. 3 days later, he walked in. It wasn't a big moment, no drama, no movie scene, just a tall, neat man in a sharp gray suit, with smooth brown skin and a voice that carried even when he spoke softly. He nodded to her with a small smile. Morning. Ella smiled back without thinking. Good morning, sir. Sir, slipped out too fast. He walked past her to the elevators. She sat still for almost a minute, then picked up the phone just to hold something. That first week, she saw him maybe twice. He was always in meetings or visiting new offices. When she did see him, she couldn't help but watch longer than she meant to. The way he stood, the way he spoke, always clear, always polite, but with a heaviness in his shoulders, like something weighed on him. On the second Monday, she brought pastries to the boardroom for a morning meeting. As she set down the coffee pot, she saw it, a small, faint mark on the inside of his right wrist, just below his watch. It looked like a birthmark, a little uneven heart. She almost dropped the tray. Her son had been born with a mark just like that. She remembered the nurse pointing it out while he was in the incubator. Look at that, the nurse had said, laughing. That's a lucky baby. He's got a heart on his skin. Ella backed out of the room and stood in the hallway for 2 full minutes. Her hands shaking. That afternoon, she asked HR for a new role. I'd love to support the executive team more directly, she said, keeping her voice light. I know the new director will need help settling in. 2 days later, her request was approved. She became the executive coordinator. Working directly under him, Jaden Michael Harris was organized, calm, and never unkind, but he wasn't warm. He answered her questions quickly, kept his desk neat, and rarely looked at her long enough to notice her staring. She learned his habits, the way he liked tea, not coffee, how he tapped the corner of papers twice before filing them. It wasn't obsession, it was survival. She was trying to make sense of something that seemed impossible. At home, she opened the box. The Polaroid, the birth certificate, Jaden Washington. Born the same month, same weight, same mark on his wrist. She didn't say anything yet. It would be crazy, reckless, but she started looking quietly, carefully. She searched public court records. Adoption files were sealed, but old newspapers had announcements. One name came up, a white couple. Donors to a private adoption agency tied to the hospital where she gave birth. She found a photo of them in an article about tech and diversity. Standing between them, smiling, was a young black boy, about 8 years old. He had a mark on his wrist. She printed the article and kept it in her purse. The next morning, Jaden asked her to book a flight to Chicago for a conference. She nodded. Of course. He paused. You're good at your job, Ms. Washington. She looked up, surprised. Thank you, she said softly. He gave a quick nod, then turned back to his laptop. She wondered if he ever felt it, that invisible thread between a mother and child that never really breaks. Or if he'd spent so long being someone else's that she was just a stranger at a desk. That night, she stood in her apartment, staring at the birth certificate again. Washington, his original name. Her name. Years ago, she'd told herself that if she ever found him, she'd be ready. She wouldn't cry. She'd accept whatever happened. But seeing him every day, in a suit, with her son's eyes and a stranger's voice, was harder than she'd imagined. He was right there, and he didn't know her at all. Late at night, Ella found an article. Her laptop sat on the couch arm, a cold cup of tea beside her. She'd typed his full name into the search bar 100 times. Never expecting anything new. But this time, something came up. A 3-year-old interview in Tech South News. A feature on young black leaders in nonprofit tech. The headline read, Meet Jaden Harris, Building Futures Through Tech and Community. There was a photo at the top. He was smiling, standing in front of a mural downtown, one she passed on her bus route every day. His face was angled slightly, the light catching the left side of his cheek. It wasn't just his face shape. It wasn't just his eyes. It was the way he smiled, uneven. Like he wasn't used to smiling for cameras. It was the same smile she'd memorized from the hospital photo. The only photo. She got up and opened the box again. The hospital picture was worn now. Edges curled, corners soft, but the image was still clear. Her baby boy, wrapped in a striped blanket. Lips pursed, one tiny fist raised like he was ready to fight the world. Ella placed the two photos side by side on the coffee table. Then she sank to the floor. Her breath came in pieces. Her body shook silently. No tears. Just the collapse of something she'd held together for over 20 years. This was him. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It wasn't hope pretending to be a coincidence. It was proof. It was him. When she stood up, her knees were stiff. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Her old coworker, Tina, answered on the third ring. "Girl, it's late," Tina said. "You okay? I need a name," Ella said quietly. "That lawyer you told me about. The one who handles old adoption cases." A pause. "You serious? I wouldn't be calling if I wasn't." Tina gave her the number. The next morning, Ella took her break early and sat in a small cafe 2 blocks from the office. She called the lawyer from a booth near the window. Her name was Keisha Brown. She sounded young, maybe early 40s, but sharp, no small talk. Just listening. Ella told her everything, the birth, the hospital, the forms she never signed, how her son had vanished into a system that never called her back. When she mentioned Jaden, there was a long silence. "You're saying he's your son?" Keisha asked. "And he works in the same building as you?" Ella's voice broke. "He's my boss." Keisha let out a low whistle. "That's rare. I don't want custody. I'm not trying to ruin his life. I just want to know for sure. And if it's him, I want him to know the truth." "You'll need proof," Keisha said. "Are you willing to go that far?" "Yes." She sounded careful but not doubtful. "I've had one case like this before. The system doesn't reopen adoptions after this long. Especially without paperwork. But DNA, we can work with that. We need a sample from him. Something with saliva or skin cells." Ella thought for a moment. Then she remembered the mug Jaden always used in the break room, black ceramic with white text that said, "Code more. Talk less." He left it in the sink almost every afternoon. That week, Ella stayed late after a staff meeting. She waited until the office was empty. Then slipped into the kitchen, put on gloves, and sealed the mug in a plastic bag. The next day, she gave it to Keisha. "You sure you want to do this?" the lawyer asked. Ella nodded. "I've waited 22 years. The results came 5 days later. Keisha met her at the cafe again, no smile. No big moment. She just handed over the envelope. Ella opened the paper slowly. The words were blurry at first. Then clear. 99.98% probability of biological relationship. Her hands didn't shake this time. She just stared at the paper. Her throat tight. Her mind blank. "So now what?" Keisha asked. Ella didn't answer right away. "I don't know how to tell him," she said finally. "He'll think I'm crazy. Or worse, he'll be angry. Like I'm trying to take something from him." "You're not," Keisha said. "He doesn't know me. I'm just a woman at his desk. He probably has parents he calls mom and dad. I don't want to ruin that." Keisha leaned forward. "Ella, you don't have to rush. But this paper, it's yours. It's proof. If you decide to tell him one day, you won't have to rely on feelings. You'll have the truth." Ella nodded slowly. "He deserves to know. Then let's figure out the safest way to do that." Ella took the envelope and walked home that night with a calm in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Not peace, not yet, but something like a breath she'd held for decades. Finally letting go, she slipped the DNA report into the same box with the hospital photo and birth certificate. Then she closed the lid gently, her hands resting on top, like she was holding something alive. He was real. He was right upstairs. Jaden found an envelope on a Thursday morning. It was placed neatly in the center of his desk. No markings on the front. Just his name in clean block letters. He didn't recognize the handwriting. He thought it might be a vendor file or a donor report someone had left. But when he opened it and looked inside, his breath stopped. A baby photo. A hospital birth certificate. A short folded note in the same handwriting. Jaden froze. The baby in the photo had his smile. His brow. Even the small crease under his right eye he'd always thought was just his. He glanced around the office. But no one was near. The staff had come in slowly that morning. Outside his glass walls, someone was chatting about lunch plans. He closed the envelope and slipped it into his bag. Then he walked out. He didn't come back for 7 days. No email, no message, nothing. Ella noticed the change right away. The quiet outside her office window. The soft thud of his door. Never opening. His usual routine. Morning coffee at 9:12. A walk through the office at noon. The hum of his playlist after lunch, all gone. She didn't sleep. Every hour that passed, her chest felt emptier. She hadn't expected a thank you. She hadn't even expected him to believe her. But the silence felt like a punishment. A week later, he returned. His face was hard to read, not cold, but careful, like someone stepping into a room unsure of what waited inside. She didn't approach him. She didn't look up when he passed. Just kept typing reports she couldn't focus on. But an hour later, her phone buzzed. "Do you have a minute, Jaden?" She stared at the message for a long time. Then stood. He was waiting in his office. Hands behind his back, eyes on the window. She closed the door quietly behind her. He didn't sit. Neither did she. There was a file on his desk, old, worn, the paper edges frayed, like it had been opened and closed too many times. He didn't speak right away. "I found this after my mother passed," he said finally, tapping the folder. Ella stayed silent. "She gave me what she could, memories. Some photos. A few cards." He opened the file and pulled out a single page. And this. She recognized the court letter instantly. It was an old version. Typed in bold, blocky font, the kind used in early digital records. The words were familiar. Biological parent failed to